Since I had a few questions on the homework from this would be Wednesday, I'm going to go through and I'm going to go back to number 7 and then I'm going to jump to number 9 because it really distinguishes the difference. I wanted to point something out here. On B, so I'm going to make changes here in green. On B, I talked in my previous video about how a better domain and range would be over here, although this one could be correct. Here is why this is a better answer and this is the one we want to use. There are no arrows on this, okay? So because there are no arrows on this, it ends right there. Okay, so that means our domain is really just between 0 and 3 hours. And our range is only between that 0 and 45. So this is going to become relevant here on number 9. Because if we look at number 9, we have no arrow there, but we do have an arrow here. So let's go through number 9 and talk about some of the things that we have. So how does the graph relate to the domain and range of the function? So what we have here is kata. Probably was supposed to be Kate. I don't know. Kata gets on a moving walkway at the airport. Then 8 seconds after she gets on, she taps Lisa, who's standing alongside the walkway. And this shows Kata's distance from Lisa over time. So what happens over here is when she gets on the walkway, she is 20 feet away from Lisa. And then during this time, since this is decreasing, her distance from Lisa gets smaller, taps her here, because at 0 feet away, and then she proceeds to ride away on the walkway, and she keeps going. And the problem doesn't give us an endpoint. So in this time, since there's an arrow here, for argument's sake, we could assume here, although it doesn't seem reasonable, that she just kept walking forever. Obviously, eventually, she would stop. But if you think about how big an airport is, especially if you've been in some very big ones, you could have started here when you got off the plane, got on walkway right away, tapped your friend, and then gone all the way to the other side of the airport. You could walk for a half hour or an hour, depending on the size of the airport. So that's why these arrows are relevant here. How does the graph relate to the domain and range of the function? So how does it relate? Well, the graph shows the domain as Kata approaches Lisa and walks away. So you could define them. You could also write it in a sentence and explain what's going on. How does the graph relate? Well, it shows, so if we're answering this question, it shows Kata's distance from Lisa over time. And since I just want to do this here, I'm going to define our domain and range. So really, if our domain is, what are our possible x's? We're talking about time here, t. Our domain is from 0 all the way up to whatever time you pick. And then this is going to go on to infinity, really. Although, again, at some point there'd be a reasonable end to this, but this problem doesn't give it to us because it does have an arrow. And so same thing, what is the range on this? Well, the range is all positive real numbers. We can have any distance here we want to show Kata's distance from Lisa over time. So what is the rate of change over this interval here? So rate of change, all we're trying to find is slope. So our rate of change, we went from 20 to 0 in a span of 8 seconds. So really, those are the 2 points I'm using. I would use 0, 20, and then I would use 8, 0. So what you end up getting is, if we use our slope formula, 0 minus 20 on top and 8 minus 0 on bottom, so you get negative 20 over 8, which you can divide both of those by 4. So when I divide both of those by 4, I get negative 5 over 2. So what does this mean, this negative 5 over 2? What does this mean in terms of the situation? This tells us that Kata gets 5 feet closer every 2 seconds. And then it says, what is the rate of the change over the interval from 8 to 16? So we still have that 8, 0. And our other one is 16, 20. So now when I do this one, because now we are heading up in a positive direction, so we're going to have a positive slope. If I did my slope here, I would have 20 minus 0 and 16 minus 8. So that's 20 over 8, which again, if I divide both of those by 4, 5 over 2. What does this mean in terms of this situation? Kata gets 5 feet further away every 2 seconds. All right, so hopefully you can take what I've done on 7 and 9 and apply it. Okay, and notice how we don't have any arrows here. So your domain and range on this one here will have an endpoint on both ends. Hopefully that helps you get through this. So have a great day, guys. Quiz on Monday.